And welcome to the City Council, Norman Utilities Authority, Norman Municipal Authority, and Norman Tax Increment Finance Authority special meeting of June 13th, 2023. Madam Clerk, will you call a roll, please?
Councilmember Ball. Councilmember Schuler. Here. Councilmember Grant.
Here.
Councilmember Tortorello.
Here.
Councilmember Foreman. Here. Councilmember Holman.
Here.
Councilmember Peacock.
Here.
Mayor Heikkila.
I'm here. Thank you, ma'am. Would you join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, item number 1, declaration of vacancy in Ward 3 under Article 2, Section 22 of the Norman City Charter. I will entertain a motion to declare a vacancy.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, ma'am. The motion on the floor is to declare a vacancy in Ward 3. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to declare the vacancy passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 2, consideration of acknowledgement, approval, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of nomination and appointment of an eligible person to fill a council vacancy in Ward 3.
So moved.
Second.
The voters have spoken in the recent election, therefore. Oh, we haven't made a motion yet.
Didn't even ask for a motion yet.
I didn't ask for a motion.
Oh.
We just acknowledged it. All right.
We're just so excited.
Well, all of us are. It's just getting into it. All right, now I'm going to go to the motion. Voters have spoken in the recent election. Therefore, I will entertain a motion to appoint Bree Montoya to the council vacancy in Ward 3.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Motion on the floor is to appoint Bree Montoya to fill the council vacancy in Ward 3. Council members, you may cast your votes.
All votes have been cast, and the motion to appoint Bree Montoya to fill the vacancy in Ward 3 passes unanimously.
Excellent. Item number 3, administering the oath of office and seating of council member-elect Bree Montoya, Ward 3. Judge Nichols, would you like to do so, sir?
I would. Bree, come on up. Raise your right hand.
Judge Nichols, would you turn the microphone towards you? I pointed it the other way.
Just
Either
twist
way.
it all the way.
Either way.
There we go.
There you go.
All right, Bree, you ready? All right. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Bree Montoya,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support, obey, and defend
that I will support, obey, and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and the Constitution of the State of Oklahoma,
and that I will not knowingly receive,
that I will not knowingly receive,
directly or indirectly,
directly or indirectly,
any money or other valuable thing
any money or valuable thing
for the performance or non-performance
for the performance or non-performance
of any act or duty pertaining to my office
of any act or duty pertaining to my office,
other than the compensation allowed by law.
other than the compensation allowed by law.
I further swear
I further swear
that I will faithfully discharge my duties
that I will faithfully discharge my duties
as council member to the best of my ability.
as council member to the best of my ability.
And Bree Montoya, I declare you duly sworn and seated at the office of council member for Ward 3 for the city of Norman. Congratulations. You're welcome.
Council member, you please take a seat, because we'll need you for the next item. All good? Item number 4, consideration of adoption, rejection, amendment, or postponement of the Norman Convention and Visitors Bureau Incorporated budget with detailed annual plan of work. I need a motion to approve or reject the NCVB budget.
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Have a motion and second. I'll recognize Councilmember Montoya.
As a result of the voter-approved room tax rate increase, I move that the projected room tax revenue for Visit Norman be increased by $918,000 and the allocation to Visit Norman be increased by $918,000 with the recommended changes of their scope of work.
Do I have a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comments regarding this amendment. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody?
Stephen Ellis?
Can I get a clarification first? Is this on the amendment or the proposal?
The amendment.
The amendment.
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. I want to speak in opposition to the amendment because almost $1 million being allocated to Visit Norman is money that's mostly going towards the Sports Commission that they're working on, and there's no reason to think a Sports Commission will do what it's intended to do, which is increase economic development in Norman. If you look at the literature on this sort of stuff, which is one of the things that I do academically, it turns out that there's no ex post, so rather than prediction, looking back at past evidence. So there's no empirical evidence that adopting a sports commission really does anything for the community of Norman. Norman has lots of needs, including things that this could possibly go towards, like arts. That would be where I would recommend that you would put it. But what I want to suggest is that this is too much money for something that we know pretty well from the empirical evidence just doesn't work. So given that this is not likely to do what it's supposed to do, we should save this money and use it for something else. Thanks.
Cynthia Rogers?
Four. I also have a question about any supporting research that we've done on what the optimal size and budget might be for an organization that would be basically marketing the gaps in our Norman Forward quality of life projects, as I see it. So I haven't seen any, I haven't looked, but how many staff would you need? What sorts of activities would be involved to do that sort of management? I think it's a little backwards or not very thoughtful to just sort of throw money or allocate money without doing an assessment of what a proper budget would be. And maybe this is way too much, which is, I don't know, maybe it's way too little, but I don't think a business just says, hey, we're going to throw a bunch of money at this set of activities without doing an assessment of what is needed to do that. And I haven't seen that, and I would hope that we could do an assessment of what the functions would be, what sort of staffing that would take, and how would we know if we're getting our bang for the buck with that. So I'm not in favor of this amendment.
Mary Frances?
Mary Frances, Ward 7. I'm walking better today. On the room tax, I voted for this. I think it's a good investment. The city can have really good investments of this money. I don't think $500,000 just in a lump sum like this into one entity, the Visit Norman, is a good idea. if it's possible to save it, I'd like to find out if that is possible, as Professor Ellis talked about saving it, because the city really does have a lot of other needs. So that's my statement.
Thank you, ma'am.
Is Andrew Roberts here? Okay. We had a little glitch with his sign up, so that's all for this, Mayor.
All right.
Oh, sorry, Paul.
Paul?
Paul Wilson, Ward 1. I'm kind of shocked my council member's not here. I'm not in favor of this because it's based on projected amounts. I get that the whole city budget is based on projected amounts, but the entire city budget is also based on projected amounts with substantial backing from years past. And I know we could do a mid-year review of the budget. I would say let's not throw this money into Norman Forward or Visit Norman until then. Let's see what happens in the first 6 months. If the projections pan out, then we could rethink amending the budget for that allocation. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Regarding this amendment? Seeing none. The motion on the floor is to increase. Oh, you do?
Get a maybe clarification to some of the questions about this being a voter approved and why it's being proposed to go to.
Would you like to clarify that, or would you rather have Dan Shem clarify it? Dan?
Who are you looking at?
I was looking at Bree, but,
Can we have Anthony clarify
sure.
that?
Yeah.
Anthony, can you clarify those questions for us, please?
We're home on the second part of your question.
Just clarifying what the purpose of this amendment is and after the
This has been previously discussed by council in study session, and when the voter referendum was proposed for the room tax rate increase, the projected amount of revenue is just kind of arithmetically and algebraically calculated based on the amount of money that was coming in from the room tax at the previous rate, and then just algebraically increasing it from that projected amount. So yes, as it stands with all budget projections, they are just projections, but they are educated guesses based on historic projections in that case. What was the other part of the
this is the
question?
amount that we think specifically would be allocated to Visit Norman based off that voter
Yes, sir.
approved tax.
There was a 75-25% split proposed in those discussions leading up to the referendum.
So under that voter approved initiative, these funds have to go to Visit Norman. Is that the way I understand it?
These funds have to go to convention and tourism attraction, yes.
Okay. Thanks, Anthony. Appreciate it.
Any other questions of Mr. Francisco? Thank you. Thank you, sir. The motion on the floor is to increase projected room tax revenue for Visit Norman by $918,000 and allocations to Visit Norman be increased by $918,000 with recommended changes to their scope of work. Council members, you may cast your votes. Did you get it? Yeah, we are.
We are having technical difficulties with Councilmember Montoya's voting button. So I'm going to be calling for all her votes verbally. So Councilmember Montoya, how would you like to vote on this item? Yes. Thank you. The item passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 5, consideration of adoption, rejection, amendment, and/or postponement of the fiscal year ending 2024 City of Norman proposed operating and capital budgets. I need a motion to approve or reject the fiscal year ending 2024 operating and capital budgets.
I'm sorry.
Up.
Hold on. I kind of messed you up because we need to come back and adopt the Visit Norman budget as a whole, as amended, and I didn't put that in there, so.
My
We
error.
already have the motion on the floor, we just need to vote.
We have a motion on the floor to adopt the NCVB budget and annual pattern of work. And we need to adopt that, so,
As amended.
as amended. If he wants, who wants to comment? Who was, oh, okay, my hearing doesn't give me, sorry. Please do.
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. I think there was a misunderstanding of the discussion last time, so maybe we should go to legal to ask about this. But the 75% split of the 3% extra that came from the vote wasn't on the referendum. That was something that was discussed by the city that you will be adopting right now, and I suggest that you not do that. You can leave unencumbered fund or unencumbered money in that fund and make a decision later. But the proposal that was discussed has yet to be adopted. That's certainly not part of the vote that the citizens had. And for that reason, I think you guys should at least get clear on this, that this would be the first time that you're adopting that 75-25% split. So thank you.
Thank you, sir.
As a follow-up to that, my best professional assessment that the split is not set in statute is that I could look at past budget books and I can see that the 50-25-25 split between the room tax revenues that were dispersed wasn't always the case. Wasn't the case last year even. So I'd like to reiterate that the vote wasn't on the actual split. That wasn't in the ballot language. It wasn't in the ordinance. Another question, and this is a question I have, and that is the projections of the room tax increase was 26.5%, which seemed very, very large to me. So I didn't have a chance to ask Mr. Francisco before the meeting about where that came from. Do we even have that much excess capacity in our hotels? I don't know. That seems like a really big increase. Thank you.
Mr. Francisco, would you please help us?
The projections for room tax revenue for this current fiscal year ending June 30th were based on collections to date. So yes, our room tax collections have been up rather substantially from prior year, and we are just basing the increase from that history.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Walker, can you enlighten us on the legality of what we're doing?
Sure. So what was before the voters back in May was an increase in the rate of the transient guest room tax from 5% to 8%. What is being proposed here is consistent with council discussions leading up to that. And we actually anticipate a contract coming forward to council at the next meeting, because the tax will go into effect on July 1, that will reflect that split as directed by council.
Thank you, ma'am. Further comments from Councilmember Green?
I just also am hearing folks talk for the arts community, and we actually do have a representative with the arts community here. Aaron, I don't know if you would like to speak to some of what you've heard and how the arts community feels about the split and what you all asked of us in the lead up to this vote as well.
Thank you, Councilmember Grant. The arts are also getting an increase. I just wanted to be clear on that. The vote increased our budget as well. So we're really happy about that. But the Arts and Visit Norman had a lot of discussion going into this, and the arts community went into this as a partnership to ask for this increase. And so we are completely supportive of what Visit Norman is wanting to do with the funds.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilmember Holman, did you have a comment?
Yes. Were there did any materials leading up to the election from the city indicate that this split was what we would be doing? Is there an intent of what we were going to be doing with it that was expressed to voters? Would voters have voted for this potentially with that in mind? And if we didn't do it, would that be a potential legal issue?
As long as the funds are spent on convention and tourism development, which includes explicitly in the ordinance uses in parks development and in promotion of arts and humanities, then there's not a legal issue. I don't recall what the brochures that went out said, but I do think they discussed what the expenditures would be with this additional funding, including arts and sports, the Sports Commission. Dan, you might correct me if I'm wrong there, but I do believe it included that. It just needs to be papered up in a contract. Historically, when we have split this tax up between agencies like Norman Arts Council and Visit Norman, we've done it by contract, so it's not in the ordinance.
Thank you.
Anything further from council?
If you have anything.
Oh, Mr. Shannon,
I guess.
Well, I was just going to address as well.
please do.
In regards to that, all of the presentations prior to the vote, whether it was to civic clubs, arts organizations, boards, others, talked about this split, presentations to council. So this was a split that was talked about throughout the community prior to the vote. It was not changed at any time.
Thank you.
Mary Frances, would you like to address council, please?
I'm not, Mary Frances, Ward 7. I'm not quite sure. I'd like to clarify, is this going to be a vote on the actual percentages or not? Not.
It's ratification, not ratification, but
And when will that percentage be voted on, if at all?
it won't be voted on because it's contractual, is what I understood Ms. Walker to say.
Okay. And the other thing is, I would ask that everybody pull your mic a little closer to you when you speak. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now the motion. Is to adopt the budget as amended. Are we ready? We're ready. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya? Yes. Oh. That was a yes. The budget as amended passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, item 5. Consideration of adoption and/or postponement of the fiscal year ending 2024 City of Norman proposed operating and capital budgets. I need a motion to approve or reject.
So moved. Motion to approve.
A motion and second. We will consider the amendments one at a time, and I will recognize Councilmember Schuler for the first amendment.
Sure. I move that grammatical and typographical corrections to the budget documents with no financial impact be made as necessary.
Second.
Would you say those words again, please? I didn't catch all that.
I move that grammatical and typographical corrections to the budget documents with no financial impact be made as necessary.
Thank you, ma'am. All right.
Your second.
And I have a second. This is opportunity for members of the public regarding this amendment. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody on
Stephen Ellis?
grammatical errors?
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. I've gotten feedback from some people sometime that they don't hear me talk in favor of things enough. So let me just say that correcting the typographical errors will make this a lot easier to read. So this is a brilliant move. Please vote yes.
Thank you, sir.
That's all.
That's all. All right. This, comments from council concerning this amendment? All right. Motion on the floor is to approve making grammatical and typographical corrections to the budget documents with no financial impact as necessary. Council members, you may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya, you may cast your vote.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion to approve the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you. Originally, we were going to go to Councilmember Ball for this amendment, but he's been taken up with a family matter, so I will voice his amendment for him. The motion, what he wants to do is increase the projected debt service fund revenues by $1,342,250 in allocations for debt service fund by $1,342,250 for debt service payments on the series 2023A and 2023B general obligation bonds. Discussion on that. Motion to approve in a second. Good, getting those two. Is there any comments from the public? Oh, yeah. I was looking there.
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. Since we got all afternoon, let's go ahead and be clear on what exactly we're doing here. What happened that we had the wrong number in there? I'm all in favor of us paying our debts, by the way, so I imagine that this is entirely justified. But is there some explanation for why we missed the mark in the original development of the budget?
Mr. Francisco? Sir?
The proposed amendment to the debt service fund just reflects the amortization of the general obligation bonds that were approved by the voters after the city manager's budget was proposed. So this is just putting in what the voters approved.
Thank you. Any comments on this amendment? Hearing none. Motion on the floor is to increase projected debt service fund revenues by $1,342,250 and allocations for interest payments in the debt service fund by $1,342,250 for debt service payments on the Series 2023A and 2023B general obligation bonds. Council members, you may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I recognize Councilmember Montoya for the next amendment.
As a result of the voter-approved room tax rate increase back on May 6th, I move that the projected room tax fund again be increased by an additional $357,000, and those allocations go to the general fund room tax administration in the amount of $51,000 and the Norman Arts Council by $306,000.
I have a motion and second. Do we have anybody signed up to make comment?
Yes. Stephen Ellis?
Ellis, 633. I'm glad we get another bite at this apple in terms of the room tax fund allocation, because I think it's important to get clear on some things. First of all, we do need to increase the allocation number because we're going to be getting more money. I think that is something that stands as common ground. What we're doing here now, though, is actually allocating those funds. So the contracts that we'll be signing will probably be necessary to get those funds to the people who want them. But this is the first and probably only time that the council will be here to reflect their approval of the proposed allocation 75-25. So this is where you get to either stamp yes or stamp no. I suppose you could reject it if you rejected the contract, but the budget would still read that. So it still reflect that in a certain way. And what I intended to do when I made the original comment that I had on the original amendment was to point out that that allocation is based on some bad information. That allocation is dependent upon a view about the efficacy of using a sports commission to create economic development in the city of Norman. And to remind you, what I was saying was that that allocation number is probably wasted money because there isn't any ex post, which is to say empirical evidence that sports commissions work. Now, I think it's interesting that the arts community who's in question here, worked with the Norman visitors to come up with an allocation that they found satisfactory, but it doesn't really seem to address the empirical issue that I'm raising, which is that we're wasting almost $1 million, $900,000. So what I want to suggest is that you hold off on these allocations. As a matter of fact, I would reconsider your vote on amendment number 1 to at least see what the heck is going on with the empirical evidence that has to do with the efficacy of a sports commission. There's a bunch of money there. We want to allocate it to the people who can use it the best. What I'm suggesting to you is that our current allocation is mistaken because sports commissions don't work. So just to be very clear about the whole question of the room tax fund. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Comments from council?
Mary Francis did, I have one more speaker, Mayor, I'm sorry. You want to pass?
That's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Any other comments from council regarding this? Hearing none. The motion on the floor is to increase projected room tax fund revenue by $357,000 and allocations to general fund room tax administration by $51,000 and to the Norman Arts Council by $306,000. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you. I'll vote. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I recognize Councilmember Tortorella for the next amendment.
I move that electricity account allocations be increased in the water fund by $16,500 and in the wastewater reclamation fund by $33,500 for solar generation admin fees.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Just to be clear, the amendment is the motion, and then we just need a second.
Do your second.
Okay. Yes.
It's another point of information question. I was a little confused by the solar generation administration fee language. Who are we paying the fee to administer this stuff? Is this an internal Norman thing? Are we paying ourselves, or are we having to pay OG&E in order to add our stuff to add our solar generation capacity to the grid and then take it back off? That's what I was trying to figure out. Is it the latter, or is this something else? Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Chris, would you answer that for us, please?
Part of the performance contract is with BioStar, and we had inadvertently left this out of our budget, but it's part of their oversight to guarantee that we get the savings that we were promised on the solar field. So they track that per year. That's proportionary of the water piece and the wastewater piece.
And the name of the contractor is?
BioStar.
BioStar. Thank you, sir.
Mary Francis, did you want to speak on this one?
Mary Francis, Ward 7. Yes, I am all in favor of as much solar as the city can generate or get or have the utility companies provide. And that was actually my question, the same as Professor Ellis. What is the solar generation administrative fees? And thank you for the response. I do appreciate all the discussion here. So thank you so much. I mean, a lot of folks don't understand any of this, and that includes me. Well, I understand some of it, but anyway, I really appreciate the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comments from council? Oh, I still have another one.
Okay. Never mind, sorry.
Imagine. All right, anything from council? Seeing none. Motion on the floor is to increase electricity account allocations in the water fund by $16,500 and in the wastewater reclamation fund by $33,500 for solar generation administrative fees. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Grant for the next amendment.
I move that general fund allocations be increased by $25,000 to be transferred to the capital fund for engineering design of capital improvements in the vicinity of Reed Avenue between Main Street and Eufaula Street.
Have a motion and second.
Okay, just a minute, sorry. Stephen Ellis.
Steve Ellis, Ward 4. Again, just request for information here. That's basically by food and shelter for friends, and there certainly are capital needs there, but what are we anticipating in particular for this kind of project? We're not building a giant wall or something crazy like that, or what are we doing?
These are curbing and things. There he is. I didn't.
Councilmember Grant can probably tell better than I can, but she's asked that we add curb and gutter to the east side of the road for a couple blocks of Reed Avenue, primarily to keep the cars from parking on the front yards and that sort of thing.
Improve drainage of the
Yes.
street and the alley that floods.
So if I may, we've had multiple conversations with council. We've opted to go with the design only this year. When you add curb and gutter to an old street that hasn't had curb and gutter for 50 or 60 years of its existence, you are actually blocking the drainage system, the stormwater systems. We've got to do a little bit more than just add the curb and gutter, and we appreciate the chance to design this before we go out and build anything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay.
That would be all.
Is there, oh, sorry, that's me. Turn off. Are there any comments from council? None. Put these in my pocket so they won't distract me. Thank you. The motion on the floor is to increase the general fund allocations by $25,000 to be transferred to the capital fund for engineering design of capital improvements in the vicinity of Reed Avenue between Main Street and Eufaula Street. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All votes have been passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Holman for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that general fund allocations to the City Council Department for the provision of passenger greeting and other services at the Norman Santa Fe Depot be increased by this increase from an allocation of $5,600 in FYE 23 and $7,800 in the city manager's proposed FYE 24 budget was requested by the depot staff and discussed at the May City Council Finance Committee meeting. The total allocation to the depot if this amendment is approved, would be $11,800 for their yearly events and services, greeting, running the train station for passenger rail.
All right. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for this amendment from the public?
Yes, sir, we do. I'll start with Stephen Ellis.
He says no.
Okay, Cynthia Rogers. And Mary Frances.
Yes, Mary Frances, Ward 7. For many years, just a little background on this allocation. Evan Stair, a local citizen interested in rail, organized a bunch of us to go down to the depot and open it up as volunteers to greet passengers when they came in on Amtrak. And that was an excellent service that we ran for many years, actually. It's not done anymore, and I am delighted to see that you are increasing the appropriation to the Santa Fe Depot, and thank you.
On this. All right. The motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations to the city council department by $4,000 for the provision of passenger greeting and other services at the Norman Santa Fe Depot. Council members, you may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
I'll vote. The motion to pass is unanimous.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Grant for the next amendment.
I move that general fund allocations be increased by $300,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for continuation of an Americans with Disabilities Act Compliance capital program.
Have a motion and second. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up
Yes, we do.
to speak?
Your Honor, Stephen Ellis.
Or, I am all in favor of adding more money to the American with Disabilities compliance issues, and I was just wondering about the specifics of this particular proposal. Are we just increasing the funding so we can go further down our list, or is this for something in particular? Thanks.
Councilmember Grant, would you like to answer that, or would you rather have?
I would rather have staff.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This amount was inadvertently omitted in the city manager's original budget. Council has allocated this amount, $300,000, for the last 5 years in response to your updated ADA transition plan that you adopted in 2018. These funds are considered by your ADA Citizen Committee for many things. We try to spread the wealth, sidewalks, parks improvements, building improvements, and that sort of thing that were identified in that transition plan where we are not meeting the letter of certainly the spirit of the ADA regulations, trying to make our facilities more accessible.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Cynthia, did you want to speak?
Cynthia Rogers, Ward 4, just getting my steps in, just so you know. So I'm in favor of this. Actually, I'd be in favor with us putting a lot more money towards being in compliance with ADA and accessibility in the community. I have a kid who now is mobility limited sometimes, so we've been experiencing the challenges of navigating sidewalks and sometimes not having sidewalks and getting into public buildings all over town. So I think this would be a great place to put as much money as we can find to make our town as accessible as possible, because mobility is important, and that's how you get people to stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mary Frances.
Mary Frances, Ward 7. I too believe that this Disabilities Act ought to be enhanced as much as possible, and it's my understanding that we have, because of the unexpected revenues from this last year and whatnot, we've got about 17 million extra dollars. So if at all possible, can this be enhanced later? If, other than right now?
What it does is right now, it puts that into the idea that it is in the budget and it will be spent that way. The other ones
Yes.
aren't, we haven't made a decision on yet, so.
Okay, well, but I mean, an allocation to the Americans and Disabilities Act compliance capital program could be given more money at a later date, or is it going to be that amount, period?
It's discretionary, so we can do whatever we want to do more. We can't do less.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Anything from council? Okay. Motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations $300,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for continuation of an Americans with Disabilities Act compliance capital program. Council members, may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All votes have been cast. Passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Peacock for the next.
Thank you. I move that public transportation and parking fund allocations be decreased by $99,768 to eliminate the proposed downtown parking meter program.
Okay, have a motion and a second.
Stephen Ellis?
Stephen Ellis, Ward 4. I think that this probably is a proposal that makes sense, but it seems like it's a bit of a reversal from some of the things that the city has been thinking about. So I sat through several study sessions where there was discussion about putting together a parking authority and trying to get a downtown parking garage. And in general, the suggestion was that it was important for downtown economic development that we have a sort of paid parking system. I was skeptical about that, to be honest, and especially the need for more paid parking. And now it seems as though we've decided that paid parking isn't really the key to sort of downtown prosperity. So I was wondering if there were any changes in the analysis of those sorts of things. Is this an indication that Norman will not be seeking a parking authority? Or how exactly does this proposed amendment and change in the budget plan fit into the discussions that Norman has had before? And this is mostly me trying to sort of follow this situation. It seems to me that this is probably right, but I don't know what happened that we decided to do this right now. So if anybody has any comment on what we think about paid parking downtown and its role that it's going to play in economic prosperity, I would love to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Cynthia Rogers?
Oh, see, I got 20 more steps in. So there's a lot of economic research, books, articles called "There's No Such Thing as Free Parking." And I guess I have concerns similar to my partners, and I promise we didn't even discuss this ahead of time, about free parking and whether that really does what you intend. I didn't have a chance to look up what Strongtown says, but my concern about Free parking is then employees are going to be parking there all day long, and it's going to actually create less available parking. I read some concerns about hour parking isn't long enough, but there's something between no unlimited free parking and maybe 2-hour parking. So I have concerns that this is actually a move in the wrong direction. And then we could think about, paid parking in other parts in town. Campus Corner, you have to pay there. Downtown, you don't. I'm not sure it's a good move, so I'm actually against this.
Dr. Byrd, are you here?
I didn't
I've
see him.
seen him, okay. Paul Wilson?
Happy birthday.
Paul Wilson, Ward 1. I'm actually in favor of this. I'm not a fan of paid parking at all. And since it is actually being requested by the businesses on Main Street, obviously they feel that it's going to hinder their business. There already is paid parking downtown on the backside of Main Street, over on Gray. And I know on Campus Corner, where they have the paid parking, the busiest times of the day, you don't have to pay. Because after 9 o'clock, the meters are no longer monitored. So the busiest times of, it's right on the signs on Campus Corner. I see the look, Mayor.
I just got a $10 ticket for parking down there the other day, so.
I see the signs all the time where it says from 9 p.m. to, I think, 7 a.m., they aren't monitored. So, I mean, if the businesses don't want it, obviously we should look at not doing, or doing exactly what the businesses want, because after all, it's their business, and they don't want to see a decrease in business. So, thanks.
Councilmember Schuler?
Yes, so we had a couple of discussions about this, I think namely in Community Planning and Transportation Committee. So my recollection of kind of the events that transpired about this was that we did get outreach from downtown businesses once they realized that this was included in the budget. So the intent really was that now is not the right time. So there was not a chance for the city to work with the local business owners to kind of implement the plan that Dr. Ellis was talking about. So I think the intent is still to move forward in the future, but to get more information, to work with our downtown businesses, to create a plan. And I'll, Sean can say more once I talk a little bit through the Campus Corner piece. So we do have paid parking on Campus Corner, but I will also let people know that we have increased the amount that we are charging people in Campus Corner and the hours of enforcement based on feedback from the business owners in that specific district. So a lot of this does get changed based on feedback from our business owners. So they told us now is not the right time, but it still is our intent to work with our downtown business owners to implement future paid parking program in the future.
Councilmember Holman?
Yes, just would echo the same comments as Councilmember Schuler. There's also 3 major road construction enhancement projects that are happening right now or will be happening in the next year in downtown Norman all at the same time. And that was another factor that I think a lot of the businesses were concerned about, disruption from construction and then adding paid parking on top of that. But I think we all do agree that that is a future thing that we do need to pursue, and we probably have it flipped right now, as in the parking lot should be free and the prime time spots up front should be paid. But yeah, I think now just wasn't, based on the feedback we were getting, not the right time yet to go forward with that.
Anything else from council?
No, ma'am.
All right, the motion on the floor is to decrease public transportation and parking fund allocations by $99,000 $768 to eliminate the proposed downtown parking meter program. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Holman for the next amendment.
I move that public transportation and parking fund allocations be increased by $12,640 for estimated utility costs at the new City of Norman Transit Center.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, do we have anybody signed up?
Stephen Ellis.
Ellis, Ward 4. Since there wasn't any information that allowed me to look this up, let me just ask again, what is the rationale behind the increase? And also just a question of whether or not this is going to be going towards public transportation or going towards parking funds, since we apparently just saved a bunch of money in that. So thanks.
Mr. O'Leary?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We are building a new transit transfer center at the intersection of Porter Avenue and Comanche Street. And as great a job as our staff did to think of every little thing we could think of when we take on a new building, we just overlooked the utility costs. So we need to pay for our electricity and I don't know, gas or what else we're paying for, but we need to keep the lights on at the new transit center when it opens on October 1st of this year. We're excited about that. So we just flat out missed it in our budget projections. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Nobody else is in?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, Cynthia? Maybe
She
not.
ran away.
Mary Frances, did you want to speak on this one? No, never mind, I'm on the wrong one, sorry. This is getting really complicated up here. Go ahead and you can
All
vote.
right. Any further comments from council? All right. The motion on the floor is to increase public transportation and parking fund by $12,460 for estimated utility costs at the new city transit center. Council members, you may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Tortorella for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that the public safety sales tax fund allocations be increased by $2.1 million for the purchase of a ladder truck.
Did I hear a second?
Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have anybody signed up?
We do. Looks like he stepped out of the room. Cynthia, did you want to speak to this one?
Ladder truck?
Yeah, we had a family thing to deal with. Yeah, I'm in favor. See, I can be in favor of something too, because we need public safety and we need to be able to deal with our taller buildings, so thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mary Frances?
Several years ago, we discussed the ladder truck. Maybe Ms. Walker remembers that, and I'm not sure how long ago it was. It was quite a few years ago. And I thought we had purchased a ladder truck. Is that not true? Is that?
We did, Chief?
We did purchase. We did purchase a,
We did purchase one. We're talking
uh-huh,
about another.
and this is a second one.
Second, or let Chief answer the question, and I won't group him up.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. Thank you for council for that. Travis King, Fire Chief. Yes, so back in, I believe it was 2015, we purchased a 100-foot aerial ladder platform. That was the first year of the apparatus placement program. as part of the second version of the public safety sales tax. This would be a second 100-foot mid-mount platform and is also part of that same program.
Thank you, sir.
All right.
Russell.
I am obviously, Russell Rice, Ward 2, obviously for this particular amendment. The reason that this is an important fire truck is Station 1 is a tiny little guy, and we need a mid-mount vehicle to be able to get into it. Now, I don't know if you all know, but Stash had a little incident the other day, and they were able to just roll out and take care of it. So if we could put a bigger ladder there, it'd be nice. Thank you.
Councilmember Holman, did you have something?
Anthony, a couple questions. With this purchase, would we now have fulfilled the apparatus replacement obligations in the public safety sales tax?
Yes, sir. The fire apparatus program was part of the critical capital needs approved in the public safety sales tax ordinance, and this is the last of those allocations.
How many vehicles have we purchased?
Ooh, I returned to the chief.
I thought
on
it was
that.
like 7 or 9.
There should be about 9, and there's other equipment attached as well.
And that's all from funding approved by voters in the permanent public safety sales tax vote.
Yes, sir.
2014. Okay, and so now that the apparatus piece would be fulfilled, the only remaining voter promise is the Fire Station 5 relocation.
That's correct.
And in order to complete that project, as it stands right now, we would need to pay off the debt on the radio system and the Emergency Operations Center before we could have the funds in hand to pay for.
From the public safety sales tax, yes, sir, that's correct.
So the only way to do Fire Station 5 sooner, we could wait till the debt is paid off and then use PSST funds or general funds to do it. Or if we wanted to do it faster, we would have to either do a bond or find some other funding source if we wanted to do it faster. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Anything further from council? All right. The motion on the floor is to increase public safety sales tax fund allocations by $2,100,000 for the purchase of a ladder truck. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All votes have been cast, and the amendment passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Holman for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that general fund allocations be increased by $216,635 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for additional sidewalk improvements. This sidewalk program and selected projects requested by myself and Councilmember Peacock. These projects were discussed at the May City Council Finance Committee meeting. And just a little further background, had a list of Ward 7 sidewalk projects actually that I initially proposed. I narrowed that down to, I think, 3 of what I considered the most prominent sidewalk gaps in Ward 7. And so any council member can propose amendments to fund sidewalk project or whatever it may be in their wards. And so these are the 3 that I felt were the most pressing in my ward. I think there's one for Councilmember Peacock in Ward 8 as well included in here. So that is the background on this amendment.
Thank you, sir. And I do have a second. Are there anybody signed up from the public to speak about this?
Yes, sir. Stephen left, so Cynthia?
I'm in favor. Another thing too, that's 2 for me today, because, you know, we want people to walk and we need to give people safe places and people that need very smooth sidewalks, we need to make that available. So this is a place I think that is well worth extra funds and even more than this, I guess depending on how today's election works and what that reserve is looking like in the general fund, I would say this would be a great place, along with the ADA improvements, to be in compliance, to put our funds, because we need to connect places and we need people to be able to walk and bike and use those paths. And, you know, having those gaps, you run into a curb or you run into a dirt or there's no connecting sidewalk, that's very prohibitive for someone that's using a wheelchair or a cane. So yay, let's do this.
That's all, Mayor.
All right. Any other comments from council? Seeing none. The motion on the floor is to increase, motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations by $216,635 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for additional sidewalk improvements. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
All votes have been cast unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Schuler for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that general fund allocations be increased by $200,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for an Association of Central Oklahoma Governments Sidewalk Matching Grant Program.
Second.
Some background on this is kind of a piggyback off of the amendment that Councilmember Holman just made. So in that finance meeting, we learned about this potential grant program that ACOG has available. So we are potentially eligible to receive $1 million in sidewalk grant funds for fiscal year '24, which would require a 20% match from the city. So the $200,000 allotment here is for matching funds for that grant program. And one of the reasons that I think that this is really important is that in the last several budget cycles, we've had council members that have requested specific pieces of sidewalk gap filling. And I think that we've heard loud and clear from our community that sidewalks is a priority in every single ward. And so I would like to see us spend more money on connectivity and walkability within our community. So this is kind of the impetus of where this amendment is coming from.
Thank you, ma'am.
Cynthia?
I have a second. She's good.
She's good. Okay, that's all then.
Okay. That's all done.
Mhm.
Any other further comments from council? All right, this is getting easier. The motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations by $200,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for the ACOG Sidewalk Matching Grant Program. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All votes have been cast and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Foreman.
I move that Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund allocations be increased by $788,352 for improvements at the Griffin Park Soccer Complex.
Second. Do we have anybody signed up?
Cynthia, did you want to speak on this one? Okay.
That's it?
She said no, yeah.
Okay. Anything from council? Excellent. Motion on the floor is to increase Norman Forward.
One moment.
Oh.
Did I have the right sheet? Paul, do you think
Did
you
you have
signed
one,
up for
Paul?
this?
Okay, please do.
Well, come on up. Somehow it didn't show up on our thing.
So I know we're improving the Griffin soccer fields. That's great. It's still ongoing. What's the reasoning behind adding another $788,000 to something that isn't even completed yet? To me, it's almost like you're trying to do a renovation on a house that's under construction. So that's my question is why do we need to add another almost $800,000 to a project that isn't even finished? Shouldn't that have been in the original budget? Or is this because of increased cost of material?
Mr. Francisco will answer that for you, sir.
Previous actions are being taken by council during the fiscal year ending June 30th of 2023 to reduce appropriations within the Norman Forward Fund to make the Norman Forward Fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. This is restoring those appropriations to bring the allocations back to the original budget.
Anything else from council? Hearing none. Motion on the floor is to increase Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund allocations by $788,352 for the improvements at Griffin Park Soccer Complex. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast unanimously.
Next motion was brought by Councilmember Ball. I will voice that for him. It is to decrease Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund allocations by $429,436 in the Neighborhood Park Development Project to correct the total project allocation.
Second.
A motion and second.
Who moved it?
Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have anybody that wants to speak to that?
Cynthia, did you want to speak to that?
Question or a comment? Excellent. Motion on the floor is to decrease Norman Forward Sales Tax Fund allocations by $429,436 in the Neighborhood Park Development Project to correct the total project allocation. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
All votes have been cast unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. I recognize Councilmember Foreman for the next amendment.
Okay, I move that projected wastewater reclamation fund sewer replacement charge revenues be reduced by $533,041. The projected revenues from this source are included in the enterprise revenues. This will full counting from the revenues.
Okay, motion and second. Anybody to speak from the public?
No, Stephen was the only one signed up for that.
Okay. Public, anything from council? Questions or comments? Hearing none. Motion on the floor is to decrease the projected wastewater reclamation fund sewer replacement charge revenues by $533,041. Council members, you may cast your votes.
And Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Peacock for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that general fund allocations be increased by $150,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for a 2-year pilot public mural art program.
Have a motion and second. Anybody from the public signed up?
No, sir.
None are from the public. Anybody from council? The motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations by $150,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for a 2-year pilot public mural art program. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am. All votes have been cast and the motion passes unanimously.
Excellent. Thank you, ma'am. Recognize Councilmember Grant for the next amendment.
Thank you. I move that general fund appropriations be increased by $500,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for improvements to 718 North Porter. And for a little background, we plan to follow our home-based study, which says by June 2023, we should have a day and evening resource center shelter. We have listened to the feedback from our downtown community, which is that there are no day services, so people who are released at night come out during the day and have nothing to do. We are turning people away from the current location. Our provider let us know in our oversight meeting that since she started keeping count, it's about 10 people a night. Also, in our One Norman visioning sessions, we heard people tell us that they want a permanent shelter, and that they want government to follow its plans. So it is our intention to follow the Home-Based Study Action Plan, which says we should have this. And I do know from that Oversight Committee meeting, one of our collaborative applicants said that as COVID and ARPA funds dry up, we may see more people struggling. That's it.
I have a motion and a second. Any public comments from the public?
Mayor, this one wasn't on the website earlier, so we will just have to open it up to the floor.
As you wish. Does anybody from the public want to speak on this amendment? Thank you, Russell.
This solves a lot of the problems that we hear from the community, from the people who are having to sleep outside at night. This would solve a lot of those problems. Not all of them, but it's going to solve a lot of them. I believe the highest barrier to getting people into a shelter is the dogs, because most of them have dogs. So by putting a shelter in place, with a kennel, it will allow us to reach a lot more people and get them into services. So I hope you all vote yes on this. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir.
Still Cynthia Rogers, making the long walk. I'm in favor of this. There was a lot of support at the One Norman Visioning Steering meetings. Was one of the most mentioned things was affordable housing, homelessness. We need actually permanent solutions. People can't be expected to find stable housing without having housing first. Got a little bit of a catch-22 there. So I'm absolutely in favor of this, and I'd be in favor of, if the water rate election passes today, those extra revenues that are going to be in the general fund, even pouring in more to help people in our community. And also, this solves a lot of problems with people being in places that folks are uncomfortable when we see homeless people out and about in our community. And so we can give people places to improve their lives and get them services.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mary Francis, Ward 7. Is $500,000 enough to renovate this two-story building? Do we have data on that, engineering of what?
Councilmember Grant?
I would like to let City Manager Pyle answer that.
We have a couple of different cost estimates for improvements to the building. We're not quite sure what that final configuration will look like inside the building or outside the building to provide those services. So we'll be working with an architect. We've got a list of items we know need to be repaired, so we'll start on those repairs in July. First, as soon as this budget becomes effective, should that be approved by council. And then we'll work with an architect, and it's coming from general fund reserves, so should council need a larger budget, they will have access to those funds.
I hope that there will be additional funds added to this, especially if the contractors and the architects find it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Hello, April Dozier, Ward 6, and also I represent Food and Shelter. I think this is a really good location for a shelter. We already have Salvation Army, Catholic Charities right there in that same corridor. So I don't think you're going to see any greater impact as far as foot traffic, et cetera. Adding day services in makes a lot of sense, as we know that case management is the critical piece to ending someone's homelessness. So I think this is a really good idea. I look forward to the future. I'd love to be part of the visioning process for what that building looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Anything further from council, or from the public? I'm sorry. Hearing none. Anything from council? Councilmember Holman.
Just a few notes about this. This is a building that we already own and are not using for anything currently. And it is across the street from Norman Regional Hospital, Porter campus. There is a brand-new 55-bed behavioral health center being constructed across the street from it right now. And so I believe this is a very good transition location while we decide as a community what the permanent long-term solution is, which I think is likely located on the Griffin property, very close to Food and Shelter for Friends. But this gives us an opportunity to use an existing empty building, move the night shelter potentially out of the central business district and into a bigger facility that has more room for other services, day services and things. So I think this is a good use of these funds that helps us, again, as Councilmember Grant mentioned, follow through with our existing studies and plans and gets us further down the road towards a more permanent solution for Norman in the future. Thanks.
Councilmember Grant.
Yes, I would just like to echo that this location still is an interim location, and that in November, we've asked staff for language for a ballot that would help us pay for a permanent location. That's all I wanted to add.
Thank you. Councilmember Schuler.
Thank you. Echoing the sentiments of my previous council members, just want to add that we will be talking a little bit more about the contract for the current shelter at the conference session at 5 o'clock tonight. So if you're interested in the further discussion about the transition that Councilmember Grant just talked about and kind of what we're going to do and how that's going to, the plan that we are implementing to move this from the current location, I would encourage you to come and kind of hear or watch online that discussion.
Thank you, ma'am. Nothing further? All right. The motion on the floor is to increase general fund allocations by $500,000 to be transferred and allocated within the capital fund for improvements to 718 North Porter. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll vote. The motion passes by a vote of 7-1, voting against Mayor Heikela.
Thank you, ma'am.
No.
This is an opportunity for members of the public to make comments regarding the budget as amended. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers?
Not no, unless they think they signed up.
Not no unless, double negative, then. Okay. We were going to correct errors of
Yeah, there we go.
spelling.
Sorry. Bad grammar.
The motion on the floor is to approve the 2024 operating and capital budgets as amended. Council members, you may cast your votes.
Councilmember Montoya?
Yes.
All votes have been to approve the budget as amended, passes unanimously.
Thank you, ma'am. Yay. Anything else from council prior to adjournment? We are adjourned.